Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today. This is Taliesin McKnight, and today's subject is Hermeticism. Hermeticism, or rather Hermetism, is a Greek and Egyptian philosophy. It originated in Egypt around 2,000 years ago. The focus of Hermetism deals with self-transformation, self-change. It deals with the regeneration of the human soul. Most religions, both ancient and modern, focus on worshiping and appeasing some outside god or gods. So most religions focus on worshiping some outside deity. Hermetism focused on the self-transformation, self-change, about transforming the self. So it is about focusing inwardly and having some type of an inward process of self-transformation. It is the doctrine of the regeneration of the human soul. About 2,000 years ago, this is pagan, by the way, a blending of Greek and Egyptian thought. Most religious people worshipped the gods. Hermetism is about causing the individual to rise in status to the divine. So it is about lifting humanity up to reach divinity in a sense. So, this is a Greek and Egyptian philosophy around 2,000 years old that focuses on the raising of consciousness, self-transformation, self-change. Now today, in the Western esoteric movement, there is, you hear this concept a lot, focusing on the self and self-transformation, self-change, which is the great work, the transmutation of base metals into gold. So, before I begin, I would like to say that most scholars differentiate between the ancient philosophy, which they call Hermetism, and the more modern movements, which they call Hermeticism. Okay. And in some ways, I think this is rather stupid, so I don't always follow this rule, but that's what's on the books. Now, here in a moment, I'll talk about the Hermetic concept of God, try to look at this process of self-regeneration, self-change, and also take a look at some different Hermetic doctrines. Now, first of all, the question we should be asking ourselves is, how do we know? How do we know? So that we could have a sort of foundation to know where we stand. How do we know? So it's very important to realize what we do and don't know. What are the limitations? Where's the proof? Where's the evidence? We do have a large collection of Hermetic documents or texts, a vast collection of texts to go by, so that by reading the text, we can see what Hermeticism or Hermetism is all about. Below in the description box, I'll give some links. So it's really important, if this philosophy resonates with you, if you think it's cool, if you want to study it, then below the video in the description box, I'll give some links so that you could start studying these texts, if you want. We do have the Corpus Hermeticum, which is a collection of about 18 different treatises on the nature of God, the cosmos, man, the process of gnosis, the salvific form of knowledge. So we have the Corpus Hermeticum, like I said, about 18 different treatises. We also have the Discourse of Isis to Horus. We have the Asclepius, or Perfect Sermon, and we also have a text discovered recently in 1945 by archaeologists in the Nag Hammadi Library, which is the Discourse on the 8th and the 9th. So, and there's also a bunch of fragments, and also there were a lot of texts going around calling itself Hermetic on astrology, alchemy, and magic. I haven't really read much of those, so don't ask me about that, not yet. So anyways, so we have a large collection of texts, so we don't have to really wonder too much. Their basic ideas, their basic beliefs. If we study the Hermetic writings, which are called Hermetica, then we could come to understand Hermeticism. Now, here in a moment, I'll go into the history where it all came from, but let's go ahead and dive on in, y'all. As I said, Hermeticism focuses on self-change, self-regeneration, the process of self-transformation. And this is done through gnosis, which in Greek means knowledge. It is not just book learning, it is an intuitive knowledge. It is a sort of salvific knowledge that transforms us and helps us to unite with God or the All. So it is a process of enlightenment, knowledge. What is the Hermetic concept of God? As I said, the whole focus is mostly on self-change, self-transformation. But what about God? This is a Greek and Egyptian pagan philosophy, so you do see references to gods and goddesses in the literature. However, God, capital G, is the main focus of the Hermetic writings. If you read the Corpus Hermeticum, you'll see a bunch of different texts talking about God. God is not really a being. God is not this external being out there. God is that which precedes being. It is transcendent and also immanent. God is often referred to as the One or the All. God is that which precedes being. All things spring from it, so it is the source. All things spring from it. Nature, the universe, comes forth from the essence of God. Nature is the self-revelation and unfoldment of God. So God is not some sky daddy, some old man flying through the sky and giving us laws. God is seen as this infinite. It is the ground of being. It is that in which we move and live and have our being. It is sort of like the space in which we all live. If you want to look at it this way, if there was a football game, or all the people, the football field is God. The people there, the air. God is this infinite thing, and the universe sprang from it, like a seed bears a plant. And just like the plant reveals the seed, if you look at nature, the passage of the planets, if you study chemistry, basically, if you study science in a sense, you have to understand this was ancient though, about 2,000 years ago, ancient science. If you study nature, the laws of the universe, then you get a glimpse into the unknowable Godhead. So God is that, it is not a being out there with feelings and emotions like we have. We are all parts of this divine reality. It is that which precedes being. So God is one, unknowable. It is often referred to as the One or the All. Sometimes it's referred to as the divine mind. Now, cosmos or the universe is the creation of God. It is a revelation of God. And nature is seen to be made in the image of God. So the cosmos is a reflection of the divine nature. So anyways, so we have I mean, that's just touching the tip of the iceberg. That's trying to put this all transcendent, important idea into a few sentences in about 2 minutes explaining it. It's not that simple, but I can't just rant on like that forever. So, you have this one unknowable God. Man is seen to be in a fallen state. What is the fall of man? What's the fall of man in Hermeticism? In the Bible, you have a concept of the fall because of disobedience and sin. In Hermeticism, the fall is that man's true nature is a divine state. A divine state. We fell into imperfection, and the goal is a transformative knowledge to where we could reclaim our lost estate. It is the rising of consciousness to reach union with God. Something else I wanted to talk about is the concept of the microcosm, which is man, the self, and the macrocosm, which is the universe, nature. So you have two opposite things, the individual, the self, and the environment, the universe, nature. These are seen to be interactive. It is the interaction between the internal world and the external environment. And there are certain affinities between the microcosm and macrocosm so that they react one on the other. So that man reacts to nature, the environment, obviously, but reversing that logic, nature reacts to the inner life of man. Nature is a reflection of the inner life of man. And the universe is often referred to as the grand man, and man is a little universe. So you see this concept of within and without having certain affinities. Another thing is the universal pattern or blueprint, that nature is made in the image of the divine and man is made in the image of nature. So following this logic, which you find in the Emerald Tablet, which is not some of the early Hermetica, this is something from the Middle Ages, as above, so below. If you look within yourself, then you could understand nature. If you look without into nature, you can understand yourself. So this has to do with nature, man, God, all following this sort of a universal pattern. So you have this one unknowable God and some sort of a hidden knowledge, a transformative knowledge, gnosis, enlightenment. That is the raising of consciousness. It is about helping us to unite with the all, to unite with God. So, very mystical, very deep philosophy. Now, where does this all come from? Self-transformation? Who the hell came up with that idea? I have to transform myself. I can't just go worship some God. I have to transform myself. Something has to occur. I have to have an inward shift, an inward change. That somehow salvation will occur through some form of knowledge, enlightenment. Where does this come from? Hermetism comes from Egypt around 2,000 years ago. Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC conquered Egypt, or rather liberated Egypt from the Persian Empire, and then you had Greeks migrating to Egypt. So, especially in Alexandria, in Egypt, you had a fusion of Greek and Egyptian culture. So Greeks and Egyptians, there was a fusion of Greek and Egyptian thought. And this is where Hermeticism comes in. The Egyptian god of wisdom, Thoth, the inventor of writing and science and magic, Thoth was blended with the Greek god Hermes. And together, this Greek and Egyptian god created Hermes Trismegistus. Most of the text of the Hermetica is ascribed to Hermes Trismegistus. That's why you call it Hermeticism or Hermetism. Hermes. So this Egyptian wisdom god Thoth and the Greek Hermes became blended together. And most of the texts it happens in the form of a dialogue of Hermes enlightening a disciple. Now, is Hermetism Greek or is it Egyptian? Some people believe that Hermeticism is a revelation of the knowledge of the ancient mystery schools of Egypt. So some think that the mystery schools, you have this hidden knowledge of the ancient mystery schools found in Hermeticism. However, it appears to mostly be Greek philosophy. So, you have this Greek and Egyptian wisdom literature going around 2,000 years ago. So, that is Hermeticism. There's a one unknowable God, a process of self-transformation, enlightenment, gnosis, and it is about the liberation of spirit from matter. It is liberation from the imprisonment of consciousness. You have to understand, this was dualistic. You had spirit and matter. Somehow spirit is trapped in matter, so you have to have liberation. Now, this knowledge kind of went underground in the Middle Ages, and in the Italian Renaissance, a lot of these texts were translated into Latin. And in the Renaissance, you had a big Hermetic revival. And so you had a revival in magic, alchemy, Hermetism, and then you had Rosicrucianism. And this created this vast wisdom tradition. The Qabalah was thrown in there. And so this is Western esotericism. It is the Western mystery tradition. It is a vast collection of ancient knowledge that is passed on today and become the basis of our modern occultism. So if you get into Western occultism, you're really getting into a lot of Hermeticism, Qabalah, astrology, alchemy, which was ancient chemistry, Pythagorean mathematics, and music. So basically, our Western esotericism or occultism, when most people hear the word occult, they think of evil, you know, evil, it's occultism. Or they think of a bunch of fantasy people trying to ride around on broomsticks. However, this philosophy is actually pretty learned. It's a lot more learned than most Christianity, Islam, Judaism. Most of your religions going around are not even nearly as learned as this philosophy. Now, I'm not saying it's true or not. I'm basically agnostic, so I can't really say what the truth is. However, from my studies, this is a lot more intellectual than most other systems going around. Your Western occultism is based on math, music, chemistry, astronomy. Of course, this is the ancient astrology. Alchemy was chemistry, mathematics, music. So there's a certain amount of learning that has to occur. Some pretty deep stuff. So, getting a little off topic here, the modern revivals after the Renaissance, which blended in Qabalah and stuff, is what they call Hermeticism. And then you had Rosicrucianism, different orders. The Golden Dawn was founded in the 19th century. The Theosophical Society, which is mostly Eastern philosophy, and this gives you our modern occultism. So if you really want to understand the roots of Western occultism, the Western mystery tradition, a large portion of it is Hermetic. Now, Hermetism, again, most scholars use two different terms. Hermetism is very similar to Gnosticism. However, there are differences. Gnosticism tends to use a lot of Judeo-Christian terminology, not always, but usually, and Hermetism is mostly pagan. So there are differences. So anyways, it is a process of self-transformation, self-change, enlightenment, the gaining of knowledge, and the raising of consciousness. That is the basis of Hermeticism. Enlightenment, learning, knowledge, self-improvement, self-perfection. It is the raising of humanity to reach a divine status. Now, in the next few videos, I would like to go a little deeper into this Egyptian Greek philosophy from 2,000 years ago, which obviously drew on older material. In my next few videos, I would like to look at the texts themselves, so we can stand on a sure foundation of knowledge in the original text. We can see what the texts themselves have to say. So anyways, that in a nutshell is Hermeticism. Thank you for joining me, and once again, this is Taliesin McKnight. Have a great day, y'all.